Welcome everyone to episode 351 of Just Joshing. I'm your host Joshua Pantellaresco. I write stuff in podcast 2. Today, Sheila Gilbert of DAW Books joins the podcast, and this conversation reminded me a little bit of my first one with Hayden Trenholm. Hayden didn't have a lot of time. He had his things doing because he's publishing his own stuff, and as a publisher you have bigger responsibilities, and Sheila was very much the same way. That said, I think we went a little longer than either of us anticipated, and that's a good thing. So I enjoyed this conversation. Sheila is definitely one of the biggest influences in science fiction right now, because DAW Books has published some great stuff over the years with some great authors. Gerald Brandt has been on the show, Julie Trineda, Tanya Hoff. I mean, there's a very Canadian flavor to DAW Books, so it was really cool to get this opportunity. I digress. So this is my second take on this. I thought about talking about some other stuff, but I think I'll save that for another episode. Instead, I'm going to talk about this. This is 351. I've done 351 episodes of this podcast. I've said this on my Facebook. I'm going to say this here. To every single person I have interviewed, thank you very much for the opportunity to come on my show. For those of you who listen to the show, thank you very much for listening to the show. I wouldn't be where I am without you, and I want to just take this moment to say this. Thank you. I appreciate you. And yeah, I can't believe I've done this many, and hopefully I got many more left in the tank. All right, guys, let's get to the conversation, shall we?
This episode of Just Joshing is sponsored by Indie Imprint. Indie Imprint supports creators by creators. Whether you are writing a book or creating a video game, Indie Imprint works with its clients to produce, edit, and present their projects to the world. For more information, check out their website at www.indieimprint.com.
Not too long, I think, because I promised Susan that I would sit and talk with her for a while, and then I need to catch Tanya before.
All right, so here's what we do. The recorder's on.
Okay.
When you feel it, just give me this little signal here when you want to wrap it up, and we'll happily wrap it up. All right. I'll just enjoy the time we have.
Okay, sounds good.
The only question I generally ask everybody when I start an interview is this: if you have anything incriminating you'd like to add, make it good.
Well, what I might like to add is one thing. What I can actually add is something else.
Well, we all know,
because as you know, I would have to kill you. So.
Wow. 2 minutes. Well, that's the second best answer I've ever heard. So the best answer was a 15-year-old pop singer. She said she stole everything and just patented it. I thought that was I can respect that.
Right.
That's creative, that's ingenuitive, and
if the people that she stole from hadn't taken the proper precautions.
That's right. And she's also kind of a prodigy. So I thought it was an ingenious answer. But that was pretty good. If I told you I'd have to kill you, it's very succinct and to the point.
It's true. It's
true.
It's a base plot point. So.
It's So Miss Sheila, I guess that's your real name. How you doing today?
I'm doing fine. It's been a really nice convention, I have to say. I like CanCon a lot.
Does you regularly come here?
Actually, the first time I came here was 2 years ago when I was the editor guest. But I have, Rob Sawyer accuses me of monopolizing the Canadian authors in America. That I have more Canadian authors than anybody else. So.
But in one sense, that's not a terrible strategy. There's a lot of talented people up here.
There are a lot of talented people up here. So it's always very funny because, even within our company, I don't know if anybody else currently has active Canadian authors. So.
Well, I guess technically Rob's an active author again,
but he's not working for that.
No, so I mean, which kind of chooses argument down. But looking at you, you have Gerald Brandt, who's amazing. Tanya is super fun to talk to. Julie's amazing.
Michelle.
Yeah.
Michelle and Ed.
Yeah. So. Well, Ed, who won the Aurora last night.
Yes, which was really funny because he was when he won it the first time, that we had come to whichever convention they were doing it at the time, and we were sitting together, and he was handicapping us so here's a person who'll probably win, but if that person doesn't win, this person has a really strong following, and so he was legitimately totally positive he wasn't going to win, right? And then he won, and so he wasn't prepared at all. So he got up and did this like little speech, thanking Rob Sawyer for making him start the story, and then he kind of got who I was wrong, and he never thanked. I mean, that thing that he said, was totally true, because he never thanked Margaret Ann and Alice, and Alice was like, I don't know, 8 at the time, and she was sitting next to me, and I, as soon as he sat down, I turned to him and said, "You didn't thank Margaret Ann and Alice." And on the other side, Alice was saying to me, "Daddy didn't thank us," and I'm like, so I got it covered. So I already gave him a hard time about it, and so that's been our ongoing thing. So last night,
no, it's cool. It's funny because like me and him are going in the same category. So I actually thought this year he's probably gonna win it, right? Because it was like he has a great podcast and he's a good show. And I was like, and he's got a good following, and he's a good journalist. I've had him on the show a few times. Yeah. It's like, he's got a good shot. But he was prepared, and it's cool. I feel relieved I didn't win because, I made a promise to Pat Flowing that if I'd won again, I'd be singing "Oops, I Did It Again" in the tutu.
Yeah, you have to be careful with those things.
Whether
you make promises about what'll happen if you win or if you lose.
Well, no, see, I have no promises if I lose. I'm off the hook, right? Yeah. But if I ever win again, that's going to happen. So I mean.
Oh, you didn't put a time limit on this?
No, I should have.
Oh, see,
I should have. But I
said this offer is expired now. It didn't happen here.
I wasn't thinking that far ahead. Also,
yeah.
Pat's a good friend. If there's anyone I'm going to make an ass of myself for, she's already you do it for your friends, right?
And then you might have a shot at being in Billy Elliot.
You never know. You're right. You always look at the positives, right?
Exactly. So since Roger Janeda was up for an award for the first time, he was naturally nervous.
Absolutely.
And so I told him my secret of how not to be nervous when you're up for an award. It's just like you work very firmly to convince yourself you do not have the least chance of winning that award, and then you can kind of relax, enjoy the convention, and you will get nervous when you're looking at the list and you see that the category right before yours is coming up. But that's like 5 minutes, so.
Well, actually, so Craig DeLue is a friend of mine. He goes, man, it's like I was okay with not winning, but man, waiting for that announcement was that's the killer.
That's the killer, right?
So. Whereas me, it's like, okay, I knew, like, I'm the first category. So it's like, thank God, it's done. Right? I don't have to worry about it anymore, right?
Because I learned that technique with being nominated for the Hugo so many times, and I was like, I got to the point, like, the fourth nomination, I was like, so I think I'm going to be the Susan Lucci of the Hugos here, just to keep getting nominated and I win it, right? And then, of course, and that was also the year that the puppies really ruined things for everybody, so 5 categories they gave no award, and that was one of them, right? And so then in 2016, I won it, and I did such a good job of, psyching myself to not be nervous by convincing myself of this, plus I'd already lost it 4 times, right? So I'm sitting there, and Pat Cadigan, and she didn't say my name right away. She went through this little spiel, and then she finally said, something like, Sheila Gilbert, come on up, and I turned to Betsy and I said, "Did she say my name?" And she said, she was like kind of a little bit the same way. She said, "I think she did." I said, "Oh, I guess I should go up there." So.
Well, because when you win, the first time you win it, you hear your name,
right?
But it doesn't resonate. It's like wait, because you don't expect to win, right?
Right.
Like the second time this time around for me, it was like I might win again. I had a shot, I thought, but I thought I was going to win. But if Ed doesn't win it, I'm like, he's going to be the guy that wins it. And I'm like, so I was prepared to win, but I was also prepared to lose, right? It wouldn't have hit me the same way this year because I'd done it, right?
That's the thing. Once you've won an award, then it's like kind of like the pressure is off.
Absolutely.
So and at the time, because since they do release the statistics, Liz Gorensky was like right behind me, and she'd been nominated tons of times and never won. And I said to her at the party afterwards, I said, "You're going to win it next year," because no one was near us in the numbers, And she did, she won it the following year, and then I was the person right behind her that year, right? So and then I won it again the next year, which I was very happy about because I really wanted that base.
So, you've been doing this a long time.
Next year is my 50th year in publishing. So.
Which, by the way, that might not be a feat that ever happens again with the way publishing is today. So congratulations.
Well, thank you.
But I mean, it's cool when when as an artist or any kind of thing, when you work at something, you do there comes a point when the validation doesn't matter as much. You might start for it, but there comes a point it's like, no, I'm just doing the work, and this is my thing, and I'm happy doing my thing. But it's nice when you actually hear that people recognize that you are working as hard as you have. And honestly, like, I like Tor, but they're always like my second favorite like science fiction fans. You guys have a lot of good books. You do a lot of good stuff every year. Well,
we feel that way. It's always nice to hear somebody else feels that way too.
Yeah, my favorite authors of yours. I love Ted Williams. Mm-hmm. Ted Williams. I actually really enjoyed his Other Lands series in particular.
It's a brilliant series.
Yeah, I really like that, and I'm gonna get Tad someday on the show. Tanya Hunt. I like. Tanya is what is kind of like my favorite. She writes always good stuff. Like, or sometimes it's great, but it's always solid across.
And there's nobody who can write dialogue like Tanya.
Yeah,
so she's a master of it. And you know, there's so much of Tanya in her main character too.
Actually, I just talked to her. She's incredible. She's incredible. I'm next year when I come back for the CanCon, I'm gonna actually do a proper. Or if she comes to Calgary.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get her to join. I do a Dr. Seuss off. Uh-huh. So how that works is, you sit in the audience. If there's enough of you, I bring a bunch of Seuss books. If there's enough of you that want to play, I divide you all into teams, and you perform parts of Dr. Seuss. So either you sing it, dance. Like I said, you have not lived until you've seen an interpretive dance of Cat in the Hat, right? And it's my favorite panel because I do the least amount of work because I don't have to do much. I just basically set up the rules and let people play. Yeah. Right.
And you just get to enjoy the entertainment.
Sometimes I am the entertainment. Yeah. So I mean, I allow myself to be the props because again, the whole point is to have fun. It's not about having fun. And so if I am asking you to do silly things, I must participate too if you want me to. Right. If you don't want me to, that's cool. I'll watch and I'll enjoy it and I'll be amused. Right? So when you have so Naomi Davis spun me like a top. And the interpreted dances used me as a prop. So it's like I'm good with that, right? Right. But then you see like a Shakespearean kind of thing. Mm-hmm. One year there was a Valley Girl off with clocks and socks. It's just like, the point being is so next year if she shows up to When Words Collide, I'm gonna see if I can get Tanya to do some of that stuff because I think it'd be hilarious.
Oh yeah, she'd be a good sport, and since she spent a lot of time as a folk singer too, doing a musical thing would certainly be,
Yeah, shout out to top Sean Bird. Sean Bird did an operatic rendition of I think One Fish, Two Fish. It was like oh my god. It was so good. I gave her like a prize. I'm sponsored. It's like you deserve it. Just take it.
You can put together your own CD of all of this.
Well, it's gonna be my Christmas episode. It's a perfect holiday episode because I don't unless I get like another interview like I got at the metal band last year. I'm not gonna have to anywhere something near as fun as that. Yeah. So Christmas should be a fun episode. It shouldn't be an interview.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which seems appropriate for Christmas. It should be a gift.
Yes, exactly. I had fun with this. Hopefully you did too, and that's kind of the goal. Yeah. But let's see here. So you've been doing this for 50 years, DAW 50 years, or just
no? I actually, my first job was actually at ACE, and when Betsy's dad, Don Wolheim, who founded DAW Books, it's DAW for Donald A. Wolheim.
Yeah.
Was the editor-in-chief there, and it was my first job out of college. And I actually had just accepted a job at an educational publisher because I'd been looking for months, and it was a publisher that all they wanted to know was, did I smoke and what was my sign? Because it was 1970. So, but, it was like, hey, it's a job in publishing, I'll take it, And then I got a call from Don telling me to come in because I had known them since I was like 13 years old, So Betsy and I met when she was 11, I was 13. At Lunicon, I think it was, in New York, which is like the regional convention there. And that's when I met Don and Elsie and Betsy. And he was looking for somebody, his president was leaving, and I had just sent out these resume letters to like all these publishers. And I just sent him the same one I sent everybody else. I didn't say, hey, I'm out of college now, I'm looking for, I just sent literally the same thing. And he called up my sister and he said, is this Sheila, your Sheila? And she said, yes, it is. She's graduating, she's looking for a job. And he said, okay, so come in. And I didn't realize that I actually had the job before I walked in. So, I started like Thanksgiving week, so it was a short week or whatever. And it was a lesser salary than the other place, but it was I was like, somebody's going to pay me money to read the books that I would be reading anyway. It's like
it was a job you loved.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. As opposed to a job that wasn't even actually an editorial assistant or anything at the other place. It was like, well, hopefully we can move you into that from whatever little clerical desk job it was. So, and then when I was there for a little over a year, I guess, he walked in one day and said he was leaving because of various things that were going on there, and he just didn't want to deal with it anymore. And then, so I wasn't that thrilled with the changes that came in after that, and I was just like starting to look for another job. And he had just, not that long before that, made this agreement with Times Mirror, and that was the start of DAW. So it started. The company started in, I think the papers were probably signed in either October or November 1971, and then the first books came out in April 1972. And meanwhile, I had started going around to companies with a bit of a portfolio, and I got a call from the woman who I used to share an office with at ACE, and she had worked for the other main editor there, and we had become pretty friendly there. And she had freelanced for about a year because they had a parting of the ways. And then she got the job at New American Library as the copy chief. So that was in charge of writing cover copy and the ad copy and all of these different things. And she called me up literally just as I was starting to look around for a job and said, you interested in, would you want to come over and work in the copy department? And I'm like, sure, why not? So again, not realizing that before I ever stepped in the door, I had the job. I brought this whole portfolio and whatever, and she had called me, both because obviously we got to know each other pretty well sharing that office, but her other criteria was that she remembered that after about the third piece of copy I wrote for Don, he never changed anything after that. So it's like, oh, well, we liked your copy, so you can write copy. So, so I had this job. And then over the years, I almost left it the first week, though, because the person who had it before me hadn't actually done any of the work and had hidden things all over the place. And so I walked into a job I had to learn with things that were completely overdue to production, right? And so I thought, biggest mistake of my life. But after we talked to the head of production and we worked it all out, and and after a few weeks I had cleared the mess and it was much more reasonable. But she was a great advocate. So the way they did things over there, editors had multiple lines that they were dealing with, and science fiction and fantasy was always it was just one of the categories, and whoever had that might be doing the mysteries, might be doing any little assortment of 2 or 3 different categories, right? And so at one point when this one person left, and they were trying to figure out who to give it to, she said to the head honcho of the time, you should give this job to Sheila. She knows everybody. She's read it her whole life. She knows all the people. She worked over days, and so they gave it to me in a provisionary manner, which let them have me do 2 jobs for 3 months while only paying me for 1 job. And so I took over the Signet Science Fiction line while still also being in the copy department, right? So I was there for 13 and a half years at New American Library, and then an assortment of things happened with Don became critically ill, and we didn't know if he was going to survive. And so Betsy had to take over. And we agreed, because that's when I was again starting to look around for another job because of some things that had happened that I was not very thrilled with. And also I had freelanced for years, because in those days your publishing salaries were so pitiful that you had a freelance copyright, freelance proofread, copy edit, whatever you could do to supplement so you could actually pay your rent, So I had started looking around, and we were having this conversation, and we decided that we would we would have this arrangement. They would pay me to help them without anybody knowing about it, while I'm looking around and while I'm still there. And we had this whole thing worked out. And because I was part of the American Library, I knew the ins and outs of things because they were in business with New American Library, but it wasn't the same thing. So I knew how everything functioned and could help them function better within that, But her mom, who was kind of panicky, understandably, under the circumstances, read to the head of the American Library and said they were stealing me away. And so suddenly our whole plan went out the window, and I had to make a decision. So of course I took some vacation and said I've got so much time, I'm taking some time and I'll think about it, knowing already that I was going to join them,
You're going out the door anyway. Your mind was made up.
So so I did that, and then I literally walked around the corner and down the hallway to leaving one job and joining the other. But I had discovered all these authors and had close relationships with all these authors, and they didn't have a person there, so without being paid for it, I was still shepherding these things through because I cared about the signet line that I had built a whole new population for. And for years after, all those people were still calling me for advice on everything from negotiations to their books to whatever, and so it was July of 1985 that I moved over to DAW, and Betsy and I basically took over the running of the company from that point on. So.
And you've been there ever since?
I've been there ever since. Yeah. So, And so we are the co-publishers and the owners of DAW Books.
Yes.
So.
You have a lot to be proud of. That is, I'm not like I said, Tor's a bigger line, but you guys have put in some of the best books over the last 30 years into that.
We've discovered a lot of people we're proud of. We work with a lot of people that we're thrilled to work with. So
you do, obviously you run the company a lot, but do you still do day-to-day edits and things?
Oh God, yes. It's like when you get nominated for a Hugo in that category of long form, you have to have edited 4 original books, which I think is a ridiculously low number, but whatever. That's the criteria for qualifying, right? And so I found out the last time, but I guess 2 years ago, I found out when I was in England for an EasterCon that I was nominated, because apparently they were having trouble with things bouncing in my email, so I hadn't gotten a notification, and then it's like 12:30 at night, I'm checking my iPad for emails, and I get this email from the office, like, this guy called, he's desperate, because, you have to say you accept or you aren't going to accept, and then they go on to the next person if you don't accept. And that weekend was when they were going to be announcing it, including at the convention that I happened to be at. And so I'm like, oh, sure, fine, but I can't get you, by that time it was too late, no one was listening off, so I was like, I can't get you the list of what I edited last year right now, I'm in England, but I can get it, trust me, I can get it tomorrow, trust me, I've done more than 4 books, and it was something like 22, 23 books or something like that.
So edited, you're still very, very hands-on.
Oh, yeah. So it's like in a low year, it was like 15 books or something, so, and that's just the ones that were coming out that year, the originals coming out that year. That's like just a fraction of the books I'm actually working on.
So you're always in contact with your various authors. Just did weird. So you got your hand in like every author's book on some level.
Well, all of my authors.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like you're involved in everybody's.
Yeah, all of my authors, and so we'll have revision discussions about things, and if they're stuck, they can call me, and which is the biggest thing with authors, because nobody likes to, they somehow feel it's a weakness if they have to reach out for help, and they want to give you the most perfect thing. And it's like, the reason there's an editor is to help you, so
I've learned this from my own stuff.
Right.
Perfect is the enemy. It's not about being perfect. It's about being try to be better than you were last time.
Right. And learn from
it. Right. But here's the deal. You can't fix it if you don't have it.
Exactly.
Right. So
and also you're too close to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you need somebody to look at it who can, and to me the worst thing somebody can do if they're blocked is not call me.
Yeah.
Because if they take months and they haven't called me, now they've lost time that was really important in the schedule. Right?
Well,
and then when they call me, it's never failed that when somebody finally calls me, we literally solve the problem in like 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So.
Well, no, it's obviously, I think this is the nature of just the beast. Like, everybody wants to try to solve their problems on their own. I think that's actually kind of a health, it's a healthy.
That's good. I mean, it's like you don't want somebody to they couldn't figure it out for 2 hours and they're going to call.
No. You don't. There's one line. It's like, hey, I need your help, or it's like, Mommy, this broke again. Like, you don't want the second of that.
But if you haven't been able to figure it out in a week or two, and you're just not making any progress at all. And you're going to make less progress because now you've completely stressed yourself out.
It does have a tendency to.
Yeah, it all snowballs, right? So it's like recognize that you legitimately are having a problem. That's when you call. Don't kick yourself for 3 months, and then you're so stressed by the time you're calling, And it really is true. It's just like, okay, so tell me what your problem is. And mind you, a lot of times it's like I have yet to see the manuscript, right? So I'm just going on with what they're telling me about the manuscript, right? And, I'll say something like, have you thought about using so-and-so as a viewpoint character? That might, and then there's like this silence. And then it's like,
Oh my God.
oh, that would really work. And like, oh, now I know what I can, it's like, okay, and what did you learn from this? That I should call you next time. So.
Well, I think it's also just the nature of its expectations. Like you work very hard. Like everybody works very hard to get whatever they get in this business, and they get this break. Like oh my God, I'm working for DAW Books. I don't want to mess this up. And I think that does you almost build in your own expectations,
right.
And when that happens, it's like. Oh, and then that's when it I have found like my experience is it's not when I screw up that I really feel stressed out. It's when I'm like when I set a certain bar of success. Because then when I set that bar, you want to try to. It's just like anything else. You try to beat that bar that you set for yourself. And when you can't, or if you're struggling, that's when the stress actually hits. And I can probably see that at least in a couple cases. It'd be like it's their own expectations that get in the way of them coming to help you.
Yeah, but it's like that's what it's all about. That's why you have it.
But absolutely. So can I ask you what you liked reading when you were when you got into this? Who did you enjoy?
Oh God, it was so like 50 years ago. It's hard to remember.
Yes.
So growing up, I read a lot of like Andre Norton. Like in the 70s, obviously, was people like Le Guin. Because the shift, kind of when I was coming into it, was originally. Science fiction was really all about hard science, such as it was at the time, and a lot of scientists were writing it. And while they were great on the knowledge, many of them were really pretty poor writers. They were great on the ideas, but the writing itself was not that great.
Yeah, I love Asimov, but Asimov was so much better in the 80s than he was in the 40s, 50s.
Well, it's very funny because I was doing a series with him I think it was at New American Lab, and he came to the office to deliver this, and I had read him way back when, and again loved like all of the concepts, but I'm glad I didn't go back and read them again because there were things that probably didn't bother me then that would.
But yeah.
So, but I was doing freelance copy for the Doubleday Science Fiction Book Club, and one of his, and I can't remember which one it was coming out, and so I read it to write the copy, and I'm thinking, wow, if he was just starting out now, I think he would have a hard time getting published. So he comes into the office to deliver the book. It's like an anthology or something, and he brings it up in the conversation, and I hadn't said, oh, I just read your, and he says exactly what I had thought, and I thought it was so funny, and then he was also saying how now, like, he gets it on the New York Times and whatever, but he's selling less copies than a lot of the books, just because everything is selling less copies, not that he personally is selling less copies. The number of copies have gone down over the years of what it takes to get on, and so then like what he was selling when he was never on the list, right? That's because in those days they blocked all that stuff from the list. It was only certain kinds of books that were allowed to get on the bestseller list, But then at this point in time, which had to be
80s, maybe?
Late 70s, early 80s. Yeah. Like now suddenly, a Clark would get on, a Heinlein would get on, an Asimov would get on,
It was, again, different time. Things were evolving, and things are evolving now. You're in a very unique position. Like, you guys are still, from what I can tell anyway, you guys are still in a solid position in a very, very volatile environment.
Because we have creative independence.
No, but it works out. I guess the question, the interesting question, the only question I think I'm going to need to ask you here is, with the way things are now, what have you learned in the last few years? Like, what has changed, or has it changed at all?
Oh, I think everything's shifting all the time, and that's the problem. It's like you think you learned something, and then you come in next week and you see some emails, and you're like, oh, okay. Now how do we deal with this? So and I think my overall philosophy has always been the same. People come up to me and it's like, what are you guys looking for now? What's on your wish list? And I'm like, don't even go there. I'm not going, oh, I need to fill in this many urban fantasies, this many hard science fictions. Here's something really speculative. I need a good cultural, science fiction thing. It's like, no, what I want is a book that grabs me. I want it to have characters I can believe in. I want it to have a strong plot that has a logic to it. I want it, if it's got some really innovative things that actually work and make sense, that's icing on the cake. But I'm not looking for things in any particular category. It's like I just want a book that grabs me.
So would it be safe to say a story only that author particularly can tell? Because I this is my belief. Every person that writes a story, the thing they truly author, it's the story is cool, but everybody uses. We all use the same tools.
Right.
What makes a story really good is the voice of the author who tells.
Right, which is very important. Or also it should be something that they care about, not something they're writing because somebody said, oh, YA is the big thing now, urban fantasy is the big thing now, noir mysteries are the big thing now, and so, people and even agents will say, oh, you should write this, and it's like, no, that's not what that particular person should write, because that's not what they love, that's not what they write, that's not the voice they have. They should write the things that speak to them,
Yeah, because chances are it'll speak to somebody else.
Exactly, because it'll be done well, and it'll have a sense of real depth to it.
So I'm gonna throw an interesting aside. You've been editing in the publishing and the field for years. Did you ever write anything?
There was a time when, although my stock answer to that is like, why would I want to do that? Because I get all the fun of the creative process when I'm working with authors on their books, and then they have to do the work, So, and it's really true. But way back when, my husband and I did this book. He had actually created this whole gaming thing, and then we did this book called Archworld, which was probably like a kind of a YA fantasy, but it was all born out of this game that he had created, and we never really pursued it. And then there was something else. There was a Civil War Stories anthology. He was a real Civil War buff and he was an actor or whatever, and so we had done a thing for that too. And occasionally, when I had more time, I would sit down and think, and every once in a while something will buzz through my head, but it's like, I don't have the time for it. It's I really so much prefer doing that creative gestalt with people,
The cool thing about being an editor, publisher is you're collaborating with people,
exactly.
and that is an incredibly I do comics as well, and it's an incredibly vicarious experience to deal with creative people that solve these problems in their own way. It's amazing to watch.
Right, and you get to play in their world, and you get to hopefully expand it, help them expand it to the vision that they were trying to convey, without it, but it's still completely their novel. I'm not out to make them write the novel I think it should be. I'm not to make them write the novel that's the best novel.
Can I make an observation?
Sure.
You enjoy helping creative people with their problems.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So,
and there's nothing wrong with that.
I'm probably...
No. I feel I've made you enjoy this more than I think we expected.
Right. Yeah.
So I will let you go. I thank you very much for your time, but there's one last thing.
Yeah.
This will probably air early next year somewhere. Do you have anything you'd like to promote for early? I mean, I know this is the last day of a con and the mind isn't quite there.
Especially because once I put things in production, I always think they're out already.
I never
remember
But it's why not take advantage of the opportunity if it's there, right? Is there anything coming out that you're really excited, or even that's out right now that you're really excited about?
So, I actually have a number of debut authors, some of which have debuted recently, and another one who's debuting next year. So Dan Stout's first book, Titan Shade, I think it's announced it's March or April, and his next book will be coming out next April. And it's really it's kind of a science fiction fantasy noir set on this distant world, which we then had to justify. I was like, we need a backstory about this. There's no way 8 completely alien races would be on this planet, and that humans would be at this point with all this retro stuff, going on. It's a lot of fun, but it's there's got to be a justification for it. So I said, I think maybe this is a seeded planet. So he starts, and we discussed obviously a lot of other things. And then one of my authors who was in the military for 30 years just got back from Afghanistan and is finally mustered out as a lieutenant colonel. His first book, which is called Rise of Dissent, just came out in August.
Okay.
And he draws on all of his experiences of being stationed all around the world in all these hotspots and all these different cultures over a 30-year period, So he's bringing a whole other element to what he's writing, which is the easiest thing, but not a full definition, would be sort of an epic military fantasy, but it's also kind of a coming of age for these characters. And there's so much going on behind so just the series title is The Fallen Gods War.
Okay.
So there's bringing a lot of different elements into it. And the Titan Shade one is actually set in this city on this planet that boomed because when the power of mana, which was like a magical power that fueled everything, when mana ran out, they discovered oil, and now the oil is running out.
Yeah.
Right? And the author actually worked on an oil rig, so he.
It's a very cool. It's a very cool thing.
Then this is sad because this is like another debut author, and I can't remember if she's coming out in February. I'm thinking it's next February, and it's called Mazes of Power. And her name is Juliet Wade, and it's a really fascinating. It's like on this world, and there are like 8 cities on the world, and they're all like underground because it's not a hospital planet, but they're all totally stratified. There's a real caste system, and the ruling and each caste system has its role in the society, right? And so there are the one caste that actually is the only ones that are above ground, they're the ones that are doing all the farming and stuff. And the ruling class is made up of 8 families, I suppose. It's either 8 or 12. It's just enough books down the line that I'm blanking on it now. But anyway, and they are like inbred, and they're subject to all these things, and so it's like this is a society that's kind of failing in a lot of ways, and it's reaching a crucial point because of an illness that will kill them, but not most of the other castes. And so suddenly there's this when the eminence dies, now the heir is going to become the eminence, and now the families have to compete with each one having their own kind of contestant for that role of the heir, right? And so it's a really fascinating world-building universe that she's developed, and very fascinating characters too, because you're really seeing a lot of it from the perspective of this one family that you would think might be most likely to get their candidate in, and there are these two brothers, and the one is a total sociopath and an obsessive compulsive, and he's the younger brother. And the older brother is just a really, really nice, caring guy. He cares about the arts. He cares about everything. He cares about women's rights. And he really doesn't want to take that role. But he's of course the one that gets put forward. And then things happen, and the whole picture changes. So it's definitely a fascinating act of world building and character building and culture building.
So it sounds good. Like all of them do. I'll check out, see the 2 of them are, and then when the 3rd one comes out. Yeah. How can people find you if you want people to find you? DAWBooks.com?
DAWBooks.com,
Yeah.
So,
that'll do it?
Yeah, that'll do it.
All right. And that was my conversation with Sheila Gilbert. Like I said, it was a bit shorter than I would have liked, but I had a great time with it, and I think she did too. So Sheila, thank you very much for this opportunity. I appreciate it greatly. Hopefully it gets you again somewhere down the road for a much longer time. You definitely are one of the voices of publishing, and I thank you for everything you've done to make science fiction and fantasy the way it is today. Well, that is pretty much it for this episode of Just Joshing. I just had one last thing to say. Going forward with everybody that's reading in my Spoiler Time episodes, I'm also leaving links for people to purchase e-copies of ebooks of these authors' books. Every author's working hard, and I know right now there's a lot of people getting by reading books and listening to podcasts and all these other things as well. And I'm hoping you guys take the opportunity to support the people that are helping you get through this time. I realize DAW money's tight because you don't know where the next payment's going to come from, or if the government's taking care of it, or what the heck is going on. It's crazy, no matter depending on where you're at. But if you can, support people, because honestly we need to support each other as much as we can in this time. Anyway, this week is going to be a big writing week for me. My comic column is going to be up on Wednesday. I have an Go Indie Now article up Thursday about C.S. Lewis. I wrote just for Joe Compton. It was definitely a lot of fun to write that. I'm working on Sunny Bank, which is a nice little short story for Prose Press. I'm hoping to get that finished this week. I'm working on a lot of different things right now. And there's 2 more essays that might be coming out. Merrill Publishing got a special blog. I told them I'd do a little update. I'm starting my freelance career, so I'm just getting as much written content out there as I can. Basically building a resume so people can see my reading and hire me accordingly. That's because, again, I'm a freelancer first and foremost from here on in. But so this week you're going to see 4 essays, up to potentially 4 this week. My last one is called How My Apocalypse Prepared Me for Now. And it's easy for me to be positive because I've been to the bottom myself. I know the worst. I've been through the worst for me. And even if it were to happen again, it wouldn't hit me the same way. I'm just not built the same way. I'm a different person. I'm hopefully a better one. But beyond all that, it's truly been an interesting time, and every day is an adventure. And really, sometimes that's all you can ask for. Hopefully it calms down, and hopefully we can start rebuilding whatever's left of this when it's all said and done. This was definitely a crazy way to end what was built, but this is an end. But keep in mind, it's also a beginning as well. And that will do it for this episode of Just Joshing. If you want to support the podcast, you can do so a number of different ways. You can subscribe to the podcast. I'm on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever podcasts can be subscribed to. I'm on Podomatic, of course. My books are available at Miracle Publishing. They have a sale right now. Check them out. My merchandise is jpenteloresco.redbubble.com. My YouTube is Joshua Penteloresco. My Twitter and Instagram is at jpenteloresco. And my Facebook page is Joshua Penteloresco, author podcaster. Stay inspired out there, okay?
Josh.